Before I pronounce sentence, I do have a couple of comments for the parties. This is a tragic event. No way to slice it. There's no other way that you can say it. And Mr. Suggs is right. It's a tragedy for 5 families because Mr. Suggs' family also is feeling this tragedy and feeling what's happening. This court has thought long and hard about how I would discuss with you all and Mr. Suggs this sentence. And as I sat here and listened to your victim impacts, I can tell that there is a lot of pain and hurt that you suffered. And you are right that you will not get your loved ones back in the physical form, but as you were telling your victim impacts, the smiles that you had as you talked about their memory and what they've done and what they've meant, I want you to hold on to that because that is what's going to persist on. You're never going to get an answer to why Mr. Suggs did what he did. And I will talk to Mr. Suggs now. Mr. Suggs, it's clear to me that you truly believe that you acted in self-defense. It's clear that this is your belief as you're in trial. It's clear that this is your belief here today. You did testify, you testified under oath, and you had an opportunity to tell what you believed in your story of what happened that night on September 12th. Matthew, Lois, Natasha, and Jasmine could not take that witness stand and testify about what happened, but they did testify in that trial about what's happening based on what this court saw. While you truly believe that you are not guilty because of self-defense and you believe that the state did not prove it, a jury of your peers came back and said that the state did prove it. And not only did they say that the state proved it, but the facts, as this court sees it, support that decision. In your pre-sentence investigation, you said that Natasha had a gun, and then when you took the gun from her, she grabbed at the gun. Natasha testified that she didn't. The way she testified she didn't was she was found dead, leaning forward with all of her belongings on her lap, undisturbed. That's testimony that she was not grabbing at a gun, that she was shot right in the face through the back of her head. That's what that testimony said, and that testimony is that that was not self-defense.
Testimony was that.
No, Mr. Suggs, you've had an opportunity to tell me what is happening, so I want to discuss with you what this court is going to sentence you to. You testified at the trial that Jasmine tried to grab for the gun.
Yes.
Jasmine testified through the trial. She had stippling on the back of her hand and on her face. That testimony wasn't that she wasn't grabbing for the gun, but she was defending herself from a bullet shot. Here's what I'm going to tell you, Mr. Suggs. There's nothing that this court's going to be able to tell you to get you off of this idea that you acted in self-defense. But what I will tell you is that it was the jury's belief, and it is this court's belief, that you did not act in self-defense. I do not know what happened, and there's only 5 people who knows what happened that night. And 4 of them are in a cemetery right now, and you're the only one here. So with that being said, the next question I had for myself is, what is the appropriate sentence? And how to craft a sentence to think about rehabilitation and the possibility of you returning to the community, but also giving the victims the justice they deserve and accountability for your actions. I read your victim witness statements, and you had 26 of them, and as I read through them, I'm gonna be honest with you, as an African-American male, it broke my heart because every single one of them talked to you and talked about you as a loving father, which I have no doubt you are. I have no doubt about that. as someone who would give the clothes off of your back to them, and I have no doubt you would, as a family man, and I have no doubt that you are a family man. And I sat and weighed that story of who that person is with the story of someone who can kill 4 people, drive them around the city, dump them in a cornfield, and leave to Arizona, leave them never to be found but by the fortune of a field hand finding them. Those 2 people are different people, and there's no way I could reconcile who they are. With that, Mr. Suggs, it is the judgment of this court that having been found guilty by a jury on April 3rd, 2023 of the crime of second-degree murder with intent not premeditated in violation of Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 1, parens 1, as charged in count 1 of the complaint and standing convicting of that crime by the verdict of the jury, this court adjudicates and convicts you guilty of that offense. It is thereby the judgment of the court and the sentence of law that you be committed to the Commission of Correction of the state of Minnesota for a term of imprisonment of 326 months. That is minimum incarceration, 217 1/3 months. Maximized supervised release of 108 2/3 months. It is further ordered that you will be delivered immediately to the Commissioner of the Correction of the state of Minnesota. Against this, you will be given credit for 606 days. On this case, the court is also ordering restitution. I will reserve restitution for 90 days for the state to provide restitution information. Having been found guilty by a jury on April 3rd, 2003 to the crime of second-degree murder with intent not premeditated in violation of Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 1, parens 1, as charged in count 2 of the complaint and standing convicted of that crime upon the verdict of the jury. The court hereby adjudicates and convicts you guilty of that offense and is therefore the judgment of the court and the sentence of the law that you be committed to the Commission of Correction of the state of Minnesota for a term of imprisonment of 306 months. That is minimum incarceration, 204 months, maximized supervised release of 102 months. That sentence will run consecutive to count 1 of the complaint of the conviction. It is further ordered that you will be delivered immediately to the Commission of Corrections of the state of Minnesota. As it relates to count 3, having been found guilty by a jury on April 3rd, 2023 of the crime of second-degree murder with intent not premeditated in violation of Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 1, parens 1, as charged in count 3 of the complaint and standing convicted of this offense, is thereby the judgment of this court in sensitive law that you be committed to the Commission of Correction of the state of Minnesota for imprisonment of a term of 306 months, minimum incarceration 204 months, maximized supervised release 102 months. The court will note that that will be consecutive to count 2 in this matter. And restitution will be reserved for 90 days on that issue. Having been found guilty by a jury on April 3rd, 2023 to the crime of second-degree murder with intent not premeditated in violation of Minnesota Statute 609.19, subdivision 1, parens 1, is charged in count 4 of the complaint and standing convicted of that crime upon the verdict of the jury. The court hereby adjudicates and convicts you guilty of that offense. It is thereby the judgment of the court and sentence of law that you be committed to the Commission of Corrections for the state of Minnesota for imprisonment of a term of 306 months, minimum incarceration 204 months, maximized supervised release of 102 months. Against, the court will note that that will run consecutive to count 3. The court notes that the big decision I had to make was whether or not this would be consecutive or concurrent. And as I went back and forth, each one of these individuals Natasha, Jasmine, Matthew, uh, as well as Lois, deserves that you serve time for each one of them, and that this court found that consecutive sentences would not appreciate the severity of this offense, but more importantly, the effect of this offense on this community, the effect of this offense on the families. The fact is that I recognize what I've done here today. You are going to be serving 1,224 months in the correctional facility, and I recognize that in doing the math, because we here in the court talks about this in terms of months, that's 101 years. I recognize that. And I lost sleep over that. I lost sleep wondering, is there something I could do to perhaps give you an opportunity to be out in the community? And is there something that is redeeming that will allow that to happen? And as I listened to your statement at the end, there was no sorry for your loss. There was no understanding that while you truly believed that this was self-defense, that there are 4 families grieving loved ones. You, throughout this trial and throughout this sentencing, cast blame on others. And this is a sentence in which you now have to take the responsibility for the acts that you have done. You cast blame on your father for the aftermath of what happened, and you testified you didn't remember something so significant. You cast blame on Jasmine and Matthew and Lois and Natasha for their deaths. But make no mistakes, you caused their deaths. You pulled the triggers. You put them in their graves, and for that reason, you will serve this time.
They died thieves.
With that, that does conclude the sentence, and you can head back with the deputies. Good luck to you.
I love y'all.
It's not over. It's not over.
They died
We love you.